When someone in Orlando passes away, what are the very first steps an executor, or in Florida, what we call the personal representative, should take in the probate process?
Well, with regards to the probate process, not actually dealing with the body, I think the most important thing is the first to safeguard the home. So many people don't safeguard their home. And when word gets out that they pass away, one is people can steal tangible personal property, break into the home, and different things like that. So the first thing that's most important is, to me, safeguard the home, make sure it's locked up so that no one can enter the house. Two, locate the estate planning documents if there are any, if they have wills, if they have trusts, locate those to the extent possible, and schedule an appointment with the attorney. After that, you're pretty settled. It doesn't have to be done the next day. Don't panic. As long as everything's safeguarded and secured, locate those estate planning documents, and then bury your loved one or cremate your loved one, whatever their choice was, and pay your respects to your family.
So, what's the typical timeline from filing to actually closing an estate here? I know there's special circumstances. We'll talk about those on a future episode. But what factors? So, what's the timeline, and what can speed it up or slow it down?
Sure. There really is no typical timeline. There's a couple barriers that prohibit kind of the closing of the estate. So the first thing is, once letters of administration are issued, you have to file a notice in a legal paper that basically gives creditors 3 months to file a claim. So right then, it lets you know, even if everything is perfectly done and everything's being ready to distributed, creditors have 3 months to come forward. So a lot of times it's a hurry up and wait and see what creditors file, and you have to kind of wait out that 3 month period. So to answer your question, some estates, you open, you wait out that 3 month period, and you start distributing in the third or fourth after the third month expires, and you can close out the estate. Some of my estates have 50 creditors and 7 businesses and 19 pieces of real estate, and haven't filed tax returns in 7 years, and things get a lot more complicated, and that adds to the length of the estate. But typically we try to have, if it's a pretty standard estate with a couple accounts and then one piece of real estate, and we try to get things wrapped up in that 6 to 7 month time frame. The only thing that does hold up the final closing of the estate is sometimes waiting for tax returns to be completed,
Hmm.
because again, if if
Guilty
you're
there.
yeah, if you pass away and the tax returns aren't even released until the
Yeah.
next year, but you have to file the person's last 1040, sometimes that can hold up the estate, but everything else can be administered during that time.
What are some of the top duties that or responsibilities that a personal representative, also known as an executor, in Florida has from start to finish?
Sure. One is they need to locate the will. So they need to when someone dies, the first thing they need to do is locate a will. If there is one, if not, they need to notify the attorney there is no wills. Two, they need to do a preliminary inventory of the assets to the best extent possible. Now, they may not know everything, and if they call a bank, the bank won't talk to them. But most of my clients know mom and dad had some bank accounts or had a house and things like that. So try to inventory the preliminary as much as you can. Um, Two is try to figure out creditors to the extent possible. Go through mail, do things like that to make sure that we can send out official notices through the formal administration process. Um, so when you look at creditors, you look at online statements, you look at prior years' tax returns, you search through lost assets through the state of Florida, where there's some websites that we provide. You can review checkbooks, you can search public records. So you have a duty of diligence to notify reasonably ascertainable creditors.
Mhm.
So that means what the court law says is, hey, you have to make a good effort to try to find creditors. And those are the reasonably ascertainable ones. Those are the ones we send direct notice to. And the ones we don't notice, we publish because we didn't know about them. We did our due diligence, but we couldn't find them. So after you secure the assets, you inventory the assets, you notify the creditors, then you work with the attorney on paying those creditors and paying those taxes until the ultimate distribution.
How can families prevent sort of those disputes over valuables that are more sentimental than financial?
I think tangible personal property as an estate planner is one of the most difficult things because, mom only has one wedding band,
Hmm.
and there's only one grandfather clock, and there's dad only has one, 30 odd six that he has from his grandpa. And, Those type of things, I always say, first off, do your estate planning. And when you have an estate plan, you can have
Mhm,
what Florida refers to as a separate list. So if I want for example, I played college football and I have two different bowl rings. If I want my
mhm,
California bowl ring to go to my son Hunter and I want my Las Vegas bowl ring to go to my son Parker, I can put those on the list
mhm,
so that when I die, there's no dispute as to where I want certain items of tangible personal property to go. Couple things. One is a family. We always kind of know the hot button items.
mhm,
We know which things kind of people want in our family. And two, I encourage my clients to speak with their children.
mhm.
Maybe for example, my mom has a it's not a wedding band. It's a ring that my dad made for her, and she's wore it almost every day of her life. And to me, it's not. I mean, it's not of like super significant value. It's just something that reminds me of my mother, and I'd like to have that. And I've told her that, not because I'm worried about the money or something like that. It's just
Mhm.
sentimental. And I hope my brother feels the same way. I hope there's something he wants that he can get to make him happy. So if there's things that you can kind of work on as a family to figure it out and put it on that list ahead of time so that there's not disputes, that's
Mhm.
fantastic. But like most people, they don't do anything and they kind of, don't worry about that list. My kids will just take care of it. The first thing I'll say is the personal representative or the trustee has to safeguard that house,
Mhm.
because, position's 9/10 of the law sometimes when it comes to tangible personal property. Because if I walk in and, take my mom's ring, for example, and bring it up to Orlando, and my brother says, "Where is it?" I can say, "Mom gave it to me 2 weeks before she died."
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to prove. There's no bill of sale, there's no transfer. It's hard to prove when people steal tangible personal properties. So
Mm,
it's very, very important to safeguard those items immediately.
mhm.
And lastly, as a personal representative, this is a difficult thing. They have to inventory all the tangible personal property
Sure.
and work with the beneficiaries then and try to come up with an equitable distribution of that tangible personal property.
Okay.
And that can be really ugly because
Mhm.
sometimes, what I find with tangible personal property is the families that have issues. That's when these issues. I mean, I'm sorry, it's easy to split $1 million bank account between two people. Each get $500,000 and they can still hate each other, but it's even.
Mhm.
Tangible personal property is difficult, and valuing, the shoes that you have on your rack behind you. And, I can get probably 15 different values for those shoes and what
Mhm.
values are we using? And, dad loved me more and I should get those shoes. And
Mhm.
those are the issues that make it very difficult on a personal representative. So again, going back to that list, the best way to do it is to have a list that's exhaustive as possible.
Mhm.
And ultimately, if you have a will too, what it says is, hey, if they can't agree, then there's going to be several different ways that they can choose. They can either choose straws, they can
Mhm.
take numbers and go one at a time. Otherwise, you're really going to be left with a lot of bickering and maybe some legal actions that a judge is going to have to decide.